So leading with impact, we're going to look at four aspects of aspects of leadership and how you'll come across them. So one is emotional intelligence. That gets talked a lot about these days, and some people even understand it. We'll talk about change management. You must live in a world of change. I certainly do. We'll talk about difficult conversations and classically how you might deal with those. And then finally, we'll finish with a few thoughts on being more strategic, how it is you can prepare yourself for an unknown future without a crystal ball. So leadership and management and leading. So have we been here before? We're going to touch on scenarios that you've never experienced and some that you'll be going, yeah, been there, you had that, didn't know what to do, or did know what to do and it went well. But there's not a lot new in the world. So there are many styles of leadership, and you will have experienced many different leadership behaviors, values, styles in your career. But which is the right one? If we were sitting live in a room, I'd ask you to think about your most preferred leader in a work setting and what it was that made them such a successful leader. We don't have that opportunity today, but here's some thoughts, okay? Is that even a right leadership style? Okay. And there's a piece of work called the Management Continuum, which does this. It looks at use of authority by the manager is full on, and the area of freedom for subordinates is full on. And the line that connects the two. So at one end, you've got boss-centered leadership. At the other end, you've got subordinate leadership. So, put quite simply, at this end, the manager makes the decisions and announces it. And I'll fly through this because you're going to get these slides. But at the other end, you're looking almost at democracy, really, where the manager defines the limits and asks the group to make a decision. Yeah, so the manager's subordinates function with the limits set by a superior, a director, a manager. So where on that do you think the best leader sits? Well, it depends entirely on the situation, the circumstances that the leader is functioning in. Okay, so if you're in the middle of a crisis, it's probably not the time to call a meeting, consult with employee representatives, and then put together a plan that needs approval. No, in the middle of a genuine crisis, you need a manager who's capable of making good decisions, strong decisions, and seeing that they're followed through on. But if you're trapped in that management style, it's really unhelpful. So just to pick a leader that you'll have all heard of, but not experienced, a guy called Winston Churchill, who was Prime Minister in the UK during the Second World War. Your great-grandparents would tell you that Churchill could win the war, but he couldn't win the peace. Yeah, Churchill was one of the first people to be ousted by his own department, by his own leadership, his own MPs, because they couldn't live with such a dictatorial leadership style. When the war was on, they lived with it. He made great decisions, and they got where they were going. But you can't have a democratic leadership style when you're in that kind of crisis. But if you're trapped at one end or the other, you have limits in your leadership style. So let's move swiftly on to emotional intelligence. What do I mean by this? Have you discovered not everyone thinks like you? And wouldn't it be good if they did? But they don't, okay? And people make emotional decisions. You'd like to think that everybody follows your logic and your reasoning and your nice PowerPoint presentation, as I'm sure you're doing now, but they don't. They have emotions that impact their decision making. So emotions influence actions. And those emotions come in several different shapes. Some people are just, I've been doing it this way for many years. It works, it's successful. I know I can do it. I know I can be successful. Why would you make me change it? Yeah, I've always done it this way. Self-expectations. This is the unspoken fear that I won't be able to cope with the new world. That in the new world, with new arrangements, new plans, new strategies, new behaviors, can I really do it? Can I really do it? And these people appear antagonistic, but they're not, they're afraid. Okay. Inclusive, very obvious, isn't it? But no one is sidelined. It's very obvious to you that we should be inclusive in what we do, but the truth is that very often we tend to avoid the difficult people. I'm sure you don't have any of those where you work, but in my career, I've had to learn how to deal with challenging people. And we're going to talk about some of those conversations shortly. Strengths, this is the opposite to the can I do it differently? It's what am I good at? Yeah. And I'm good in this space, in this area, in this way. Will that be lost in a new environment, in a new change, in a culture change, in a strategy plan? Yeah. And this one, people tend to camouflage this one, but the bottom line comes down to what am I going to lose as a result of this? Am I going to be better off or worse off in terms of my career, in terms of my job satisfaction, in terms of the people that I work with? People have that question, and to be a great leader, making great impact for the benefit of the organization, you're going to need to understand what that change is. So in doing so, give people a purpose, not a task. Yeah, you need to paint the big picture. What does it look like when we're done? This is the change. This is what it's going to feel like, and these are the benefits. And paint that as a big future picture, not so far away they can't grasp it, but this is where we're going. Yeah, and then maps on your mobile device will tell you how to get there if you're driving a car, but you have to put the destination in first. Yeah, so give people a purpose. Yeah, just like you would if they were on a journey. What about the unhappy people? Excuse me a second. Unhappy people. Your aim is not to make them happy. Okay, people are responsible for their own happiness, and you can do things, and you may require things that are a bit of a challenge for them, but you are not responsible for the happiness. If your main motive is to have a happy workforce where everybody is always happy, you're going to be frustrated and disappointed. Yep. People are responsible for their own happiness. You can't do that. You can do things momentarily that make them feel a bit better, but it doesn't last. So your aim with unhappy people is their understanding. Okay, and people think differently to you, and they buy in based on their preferred way of thinking. So there are some people who want the numbers, who want the timetable, they want the spreadsheet, and heaven help if you make a mistake on their spreadsheet, because if you got this wrong, how can I trust anything? I've had that card played on me. So some people want the numbers, other people want to know how's that going to affect me. Others want to know how's that going to affect others, because they have genuine concern and interest for other people. Yeah. And you want to move from understanding to acceptance. Acceptance is not the same as agreement, sadly. So again, if your decision-making model is consensus, you're going to make very little progress, if any. And consensus is a poor way of putting together a strategy and a plan. That doesn't mean to say you don't draw on people's input, but you can't act on everything that everyone says. Okay. And you want their participation. Do you understand where we're going? Yeah. And will you work with us? Will you journey with us in doing this? Or will you be a passive observer? Or worse still, as we'll discover later, a saboteur, the sort of person who's happy when things go wrong. Okay. And we don't want people who sabotage. Okay. And these people aren't going around tipping tea and coffee down the laptop or the PC on the desk. They're not doing that, but they just enjoy when things go wrong. Yeah, it's kind of I told you so, knew that wasn't going to work. Okay. And when we talk about sabotaging, what they're doing is they're influencing everybody else's thinking, everybody else's attitude. Yeah. And we'll talk about how to deal with those and why you need to deal with those shortly. And when you see it, please confront it when it happens. And confrontation, lots of people avoid it. First few pointers. Confrontation is never public. It's never a throwaway remark. So I had to deal with a manager once who walked past the desk of an employee, one of his team, and he said, "Oh, Tim, nice of you to make it on time this morning." And that did not improve Tim's timekeeping. And everybody else had words to describe that manager's behavior. And Tim was way short of motivated. So confrontation happens in terms of, can we have a chat? Yeah, and 9 times out of 10 they know what's coming, but you're going to have a conversation. You're going to treat them with courtesy, dignity, and respect. You're going to have that conversation in private, and in that conversation, you're going to talk about the behaviours that you've observed, and they do need to be behaviours that you've observed. Lots of people talk about, well, how do I deal with the attitude? Attitude's really difficult to deal with, okay? But attitude almost always shows up in behaviours at some point, and you want to deal with behaviours, okay? And in that confrontation, in that challenging conversation, you want to be clear about, this is what I've observed. Yeah. Am I missing anything? Is there something going on I need to know about? Yeah. Like a fatality in the family might affect somebody for a few days. So find out, is there anything going on that you need to know about? And then describe the new behaviors. Yeah. And then hold them to account when they succeed by congratulating them, or hold them to account when they fail by having another conversation. I had a manager say to me once, oh, I didn't want to talk about it again because I didn't want to be nitpicky and small-minded. And my response was, do you want to deal with this while it's big or while it's small? Do you want to deal with it before it explodes and affects everybody else in the office? Or do you want to deal with it while it's easy? Yeah. Deal with it while it's small and deal with it while it's easy. Change management. Gosh, doesn't this get talked about a lot? And there are challenges for those who work in government, because change is often unexpected, is often imposed, is often difficult to get a grip on. But here's what you can do. Not everybody likes change, okay? You've worked this out, okay? So here's a challenge. When you get home this evening, if you have a living partner and you share a bed, get in the wrong side of the bed. I mean, you know exactly what I mean by that, about what is the wrong side of the bed. Get in the wrong side of the bed before they turn up, and let me know. You can't let me know how that goes, but see how that goes. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Yeah. Unexpected imposed change always gets a difficult, challenging reaction. Okay. So if you're feeling brave, give it a try, and then work out what change lessons you've learned. Okay. Uncertainty is like poison. Okay. Most poisons get into your bloodstream. They have a point of entry, but they eventually infect the whole person. So uncertainty can be like that. Something will happen that people weren't expecting, didn't understand. There'll be the incident where it happens, but eventually it will affect and infect what they think, what they say, how they behave, and what they do. Okay. So remove uncertainty wherever you can. Now, the frustrating thing is that in some roles, and we're going to look at this in strategic thinking, uncertainty is inevitable. Okay. But your job is to remove as much of it as you can. Please keep to your plan. Yeah, if you've spelt out a plan to your team, to the organization, to your department, keep to the plan. It's a measure of your integrity. Do plans need changing? Oh, yes, they do. Okay. And there's a whole piece workshop on managing stakeholders, but you will know who you need to keep in touch. There'll be different stakeholders. Who do I need to consult? Who do I need to inform? Who do I not need to inform? And it's worth understanding that executive summaries exist for a reason. Yeah, if you do a 14-page report, the chances are that some people, those with a short attention span, I'm guilty, will read the executive summary. Okay, so have appropriate comms levels for each stakeholder. And please plan for the unexpected, and we'll look at this in a bit more detail when we do strategy. How do you plan for COVID? How do you plan for Brexit? Okay, how do you plan for the unexpected that takes you by surprise? And this is the bottom line. Almost everybody who's involved in a change program is going to ask you this question. How will it affect me? And this is the bottom line. And people will talk about all sorts of things. They'll talk about society. They'll talk about bigger issues. They'll talk about global issues. And when you work your way through all of that, not because people are selfish or self-centered, but people have to live. And how will it affect me? Yeah. Will my job change? Will my location change? Will the people I work with change? Will my responsibilities change? It's It's about me, it's about me, it's about me. That doesn't make them bad people, it just makes them human. So how do you manage and motivate during change initiatives? The people and their behavior make a difference. Okay, so if you don't manage people's behavior and do your best to manage people's attitudes and participation, that they will infect. I've used that word several times because poor leadership gets into the bloodstream, gets into the thinking. Okay, your people and their behavior makes a difference to your project. So how do you engage people? This is a stunning piece of work. There's a piece of work done by Gallup in the UK, and Gallup did a survey of motivation. And we trust them because they're published and they're credible. These results are for the UK, and this is what they concluded: that 18% of the workforce are highly motivated. They're there, they're up for it. You can identify these people. These are the ones you know, these are the ones you trust, these are the ones who are reliable, these are people who are consistent, they tell the truth, they've got some integrity about them. They're highly, highly motivated. Okay? The majority of the workforce do their job. Okay, and that's great. And a lot of people they'll turn up, they'll be there, they'll do what's asked of them. They don't have a bad attitude, but nor are they out to change the world. Okay, they're doing their job. And that leaves 19%, and I've touched on these, who are active saboteurs or disengaged. Okay, and as I said previously, they're not pouring coffee down the laptop of their neighbor, but they're enjoying failure. They're enjoying it when it goes wrong. And if they see it coming, they won't act to fix it. Okay, because they didn't want it in the first place. They're disengaged with your initiative. So what's this got to do with change? Okay, if you're making a new initiative, a new launch, a new way of working, it's like trying to get a rocket off the ground. Okay, and I would encourage you that if you've got a project like that, find your motivated people. Okay, and they're the ones who will help you get it off the ground. It's just like a rocket launch. A lot of the energy and motivation, a lot of the power, a lot of the dynamic, yeah, it takes place when you get the thing off the ground and when you get it into orbit. Once it's in orbit, it's not consuming the same amount of energy. Okay, and that's the point at which your 63% will get on board. They do what's necessary. They keep the thing going. They keep the thing in orbit. We would be lost without them. Okay, but it's off the ground. Find your motivated 18%. You know who they are, and that doesn't mean you ignore the 82% of your workforce, but it does mean that you will pull on them most during early stages of change. Okay. So a guy called John Cotter, well known, he's put together a change model which is helpful, and I'll move through this fairly quickly because we want to give time for questions at the end. But he's put together an eight-step model. Okay, so increase the sense of urgency. Yeah, if you've got a change program coming and everybody's a bit laissez-faire about it, you're never going to get it off the ground. It's statistically proven that most large initiatives are delivered late and are delivered over budget. And we could all think of a large initiative where that's true. Okay, so there needs to be some sense of urgency. Build the guiding team, and this plays to the 18% that I was referring to just now. You need to build them, get them on board. They're the ones who will steer, who will guide, who will encourage, who will motivate. And when they succeed, they'll celebrate the success. In the same way that the saboteurs kind of enjoy the failure, these 18% will celebrate the success. Okay? So I was with a private sector guy who runs his own business recently, and we had a talk about celebrating success. And I saw him a few months later, and he was like, "David, I get my leadership team together once a fortnight, and before we start our meeting, everybody has to give me some good news, something that went well for them in their sphere, in their part of the business in the past couple of weeks." And he said it sets the tone for the whole office. And the other thing they've done in terms of building the guiding team is when people turn up for this meeting, they all have to leave their mobile devices outside with somebody who's not in the meeting. And this made for a panic-stricken leadership team. And they were like, John was, no, if you get an urgent call from a customer, we'll come and find you. We know who the customers are. We'll come and find you. And I was like, so what benefits were there from this, John? And he said, well, we were discovering that they didn't know each other, that there was no connection, there was no relationship, and therefore when they needed help, they didn't pull on each other. Yeah, they were a bunch of silo thinking team leaders and managers. He said, but now when they turn up for a meeting early, because no one's late, he said they were previously on their device. And he said now they turn up for the meeting, they leave their device outside of the meeting, and they talk to each other. They know who's doing what, they know who's going on holiday. They know about their wife's forthcoming surgery, their husband's marathon run at the weekend. What difference does any of that make? Well, actually, what it means is they're working with human beings. They're working with real people with real interests. Okay, and it's made quite a dramatic difference to his team. Celebrating a success, yeah, and learning something about the people you work with. It's a powerful change motivator. It's changed the culture and the feel to the organization. Get the vision right. This is your end destination. Yeah. And we'll do this in a minute, but it's like driving a car. Okay. Sometimes it's useful to look back. That's why you have a rear view mirror. Most of the time you're looking forwards. Okay. And the good news is you have a large windscreen. Yeah. And washers and wipers, and you can keep the vision clear. You can keep the vision clean. And every so often it helps to look back, see where you've come from, see what you've done. But what we're interested in is the vision. This is where we're going. We've painted a picture of the future, and that's what we're pursuing. Communication, you'll get this everywhere. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Okay. People do not buy in to what they don't know about or don't understand. And simply informing people doesn't necessarily lead to understanding. Okay. You need to speak their language. Like you need to speak numbers and figures to the stats person. You need to speak personal impact to the person who cares about others. Empowering action. In a change project like with significance, you don't want people who've got to get permission through 3 layers of hierarchy before they can do something. Yeah. Set clear responsibilities, set clear limits of authority, of decision making and of spending. Yeah. And then empower the people you trust to make decisions, to do some spending. Yeah. They'll be really good at communicating. Yeah. So they'll tell you when they're doing it, but they won't stall the project because they've had to go through 4 levels of hierarchy and 4 levels of permission making. Please create short-term wins. And I alluded to this just now. Celebrate when anything goes right, when anything goes well. Got to be real. There's nothing worse than made up reasons to celebrate. Okay. And they need to be work related. Okay. But set yourself targets. I learned earlier in my career, somebody said to me, David, what gets measured gets done. I thought, no, you're right. So measure the short-term wins, measure the progress, and each time you hit a milestone, yeah, and maybe you don't have milestones, maybe you have something shorter than a mile, okay, but when the team trips it, celebrate it, okay, and don't let up, okay. It's hard work doing a change management project, and it takes your time, your energy, it pulls on your passion, it may stretch some of your working relationships. Don't give up. Yeah. Don't be a quitter. Yeah. Know where you're going. Pull on other people for support and encouragement. Yeah. Sometimes we just need a good, conversation, a good celebrate with somebody. But don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. Quitters never succeed. And make change stick. there'll be people who say yes and then don't change their behaviours, don't change their way of working, don't change the way they use the spreadsheet, don't change their reporting structures. Okay, you will have to work hard at making change stick, and it'll be your forget how many it was, the lower of those three groups, the saboteurs. Yeah, you need to keep track of them and their improvement and their performance. We're not bullying. Yeah, please don't do bullying, but we are doing accountability. Yeah? And the person who says to you, when you set somebody a task and they say to you, I'll try, 9 times out of 10, they're setting you up for disappointment. Because what I'll try means is I'll have a good excuse when I don't succeed. Okay. So when somebody says to you, I'll try, please don't end the conversation. Okay. Don't say that's great, because it's not great. Yeah. So the question after that is, can you do this? I'll try. Your response is, what do you need from me to turn that into a yes? Okay. Because your job as a leader, as a change manager, as a change strategist, your job is to help people accountable in ways that strengthen and affirm them, but hold them accountable for what they've agreed to do. Yeah. And the I'll try will be a catalogue of disappointments, possibly. If their world is so full of uncertainty that all they've got is an I'll try, you'll know. And your job is to work at removing as much uncertainty as you can. That is not easy working in government. So you have my admiration. So these are the reactions you're going to get to different change. There are people who are going to live in denial. Yeah. I've been here before. I've done this before. It doesn't work. Yeah. I'm not convinced. No one's made it work. You're not going to make it work. And then there'll be some emotion, and we'll talk about how to deal with emotional responses in a minute. But there'll be, the denial won't come calm and logic and reasoned always. Sometimes it will, but sometimes it will come with passion and enthusiasm. And passion rightly directed and enthusiasm rightly directed is great, but not when it's poured like cold water on your fire and on your project. Okay. So you're going to get to deal with some emotions, and we'll touch on some of that in a minute. There'll be resistance. There'll be people who just keep going and going and going and saying, no, no, no. Every time they speak, they're going to hit a problem. So I led a leadership team for a medium-sized organisation, and we met every week. And I was the CEO, and there were managers for different departments. And we had one individual, we call him Fred. It wasn't Fred's name, but we'll call him Fred. And Fred came to the group with a proposal for his area of work. So our model is they outline their proposal, the rest of the leadership team comment on it, and unless it's immoral or illegal, they get to make that decision. Well, they decided on this occasion that Fred's idea wasn't a goer, so it didn't pass go. And so the next week we're together. When we get to any other business, Fred says it all again and brings it all up again. And it was like, Fred, we did this last week, and the team responded and replied, and they were courteous, they were polite, and that was the end of that. Next week, Fred, under any other business, and this kind of repetitive nagging can be very destructive. So what do? Well, you don't slap Fred down in public, slap him down in front of all of his friends and colleagues. What you do is you have a private conversation with Fred. And the conversation I had went like this: Fred, I appreciate your thought, but the team's not convinced, and these are the reasons they're not convinced. If you come up with something new that changes, improves, innovates in this area, I want to hear it again. But until you've got something brand new to bring to the party, please don't bring it up again. Are we okay doing that? Yeah. And Fred was like, oh, if you say so. Remember, my job is not to make Fred happy. Yeah. And pleasantly, Fred didn't mention it again, for which I and the rest of the exec team were most grateful. And where you're going is acceptance. I said earlier that agreement and acceptance are not the same thing. Okay, in your decision-making process, you are not going to get lots of universal agreement. But what you are looking for is, this is where we're going. You've got your say. Somebody said to me, David, everybody gets their say, but not everybody gets their way. If you want buy-in, you are going to have to hear people. You're going to have to hear them out. You're going to have to listen to what they've got to say, because they'll go home and you don't want them saying, didn't listen to a word I said. Okay, they will ditch, they'll sabotage, they'll rain all over your parade. They need to be heard, but at the end of the conversation, they need to understand whether or not what they've said is going to make a difference. If not, you tell them and ask the closing question. The closing closed question, which is, will you work with us? Will you partner with us in making this happen? And commitment is commitment. It's like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to consistently do it. I'm going to do it in a way that builds, that doesn't destroy or pull down or damage in any way. And even though it's not what I would have done, I'm in. I'm there. I'm for you. And we want people like that in our workplace, don't we? Yeah. As long as they're not violating the law or morals. So how do you deal with resistance? Okay. You can overcome resistance as long as you don't give up. Okay. And so explain the reasons for the change. We've alluded to some of this already. You're not just binning the past. It's kind of, this is where we've been, this is where we're going, and this is why. And you need to be able to do that in a way that everybody can articulate the mission. Okay. When somebody says why is everybody doing that, they, like you, can explain the reasons for the change. Yeah. If they can't explain the reasons for the change, you'll get, I don't know, they're off on one again. It's been like this before. You don't want that. They need to have reasons for the change. They may not agree. They may not want what you're doing, but they know the reasons. And explain the change in your listeners' terms. We touched on this earlier. Not everybody thinks the same. And some people want to hear numbers, stats, and figures. Some people want to hear organizational charts. Some people want to hear culture. Some people want to hear how's it going to affect what I do, the people I work with. Will they be gone to a different part of the organization? So when somebody asks a question, answer their question. Okay. I'm not going to comment on politicians, but please, when somebody asks a question, answer their question. Okay. Even if you think they're not going to be happy with the answer. Okay. Shared vision and seek to get buy-in. And again, we talked about this earlier, but it's key to overcoming resistance. Okay. When I talk about a shared vision, it's people can see where you're going. People can see where you're wanting to take them. Yeah. And they understand it. Again, we're not talking about happy people or agreeing people. That's nice when it happens, but it's not always possible. Address the concerns of stakeholders. And we've got a whole day on managing stakeholders. That's not a plug, it's just how it is. That's an insight to the sophistication in managing stakeholders. And there'll be people in your world who are very powerful and have the ability to drive your initiative forward or stall it. Okay. There'll be people who have a lot of power but aren't interested in your project. And there'll be others who are interested but got no power. Yeah. They love it, they want to be all over it, they'd love to be involved. It's not their world, it's not their work, but they're really for it. And there are those who don't know and don't care. And that's okay. Yeah. It's not part of their remit, it's not part of their role. Yeah. And it doesn't speak to an area of personal passion and interest. Okay. So understand your stakeholders and communicate with them appropriately. Yeah. Please involve people in the process. The worst thing you can do is sideline people without communication. Okay. Please don't do that. Even if you think they don't have a lot of influence or say, if they have an interest, yeah, communicate. Because you are contagious. There's a thought for you. So a guy called Mahatma Gandhi said this, relatively, I think, well-known Indian spiritual and political leader. He said, you must be the change you want to see in the world. So in terms of how you lead people and manage people, in terms of how you think about change, in terms of how you make things happen, you need to be modeling how you want everybody else to be. And the worst thing you can do is continually pull rank. There may be an occasion in the midst of a genuine crisis, yeah, a threatening situation, where you know what to do, and so you go off and do it, okay, and you instruct others what to do. Okay, that's where the leader has maximum authority, but it works well in a crisis. Okay, so I worked for an organisation, and we did startup business, and one day the CEO of the company came to me and said, Fred, not the same Fred, Fred is causing us problems. He runs a part of the organisation, remote from head office. He's causing problems with the way he's behaving and how he's treating the customer. He's got to go. So we had a conversation about, okay, we can get rid of him. And the question back was, can we really? I didn't think we could do that sort of thing. That's brilliant. So I said, when do you want him gone? He said, can we have him gone by the weekend? I said, of course we can. And the CEO was like in heaven. I said, that you want him gone by the weekend? Yeah. I said, that'll cost you £150,000. And being a numbers guy, he said, I'm not paying money to a man I'm going to fire. I don't want to pay him anything. So I said, let's be clear, you don't want to pay him anything. No. I said, well, if this continues, he'll be gone in 6 months. I'm not waiting 6 months. How long do you want to wait? So do you see, it's a classic HR trap, actually, in terms of, yeah, what do you want? Do you want to pay in time or do you want to pay in money? Now, as it happened, Fred was trapped at the end of that management continuum where he used his authority all the time, wasn't consultative, was not averse to pulling rank. And so what we did was we moved Fred to a part of the organization that was in crisis, where Fred's mono leadership style served him well and served us well. He was a great success in that role, in that leadership role. Soon as it was stable, soon as it was settled, we went and found another role for him. But I wasn't around for that piece of Fred's world. Do you understand how it works? Yeah. If people are trapped in a particular leadership style, you'll only get the best out of them when they are in a role that suits that leadership style. The best managers, and if you want to lead with impact, the best managers know when to step up and know when to step back. Yeah, it's not relinquishing authority or responsibility, but it is all about, do you know what? These people have been here before, they know what they're doing, they're good enough, we've briefed each other, and off they go to fix it. Okay. So difficult conversations, I'm watching the time tick away. These are some don't do's, okay? So when you're dealing with challenging people, don't do these things. Please don't apologize profusely. Regret is okay. I'm sorry you feel like that. I'm sorry it's going to affect you in this way. But don't go sorry, 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 sorry. The Brits get a bit contentious. The Brits apologize way too much. Somebody once said to me, David, God gets one sorry, you're not getting two. I thought, okay. And you know, if you do something wrong, apologize once, yeah, and then go and clean up your mess, fix it, repair the relationships, put right whatever got damaged. But excessive apologizing doesn't fix anything, and in your own thinking doesn't do you any good either. If you can have a challenging conversation, don't beat around the bush. Okay, get there quickly. Yeah, they know something's coming. You don't do lots of polite conversation. How was your weekend? How was your football team? You know, if it's a difficult conversation, get there quickly. Don't be insincere. Don't say you're sorry if you're not. Okay. Don't use humor. I did this when making a senior guy redundant, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. We're having the conversation. He's redundant, and he makes a joke about one aspect of it. So I thought, oh, humor is his coping mechanism. So I made a joke back. And he leapt out of his chair. You think this is funny, do you? Well, it's not funny for me. I've got a mortgage, a wife, and children. Don't use humor. Okay, it's not going to work. That lesson is burned into my memory and my experience. Please don't tell people your problems. They don't care. Okay. I know this is difficult for you, but can you imagine what it's like for me? I've got so many people to see. I'm going to be traveling the country. My life's just going to be difficult. My wife's not happy. My husband's, had to step up in childcare. Don't tell them your problems. They don't care. Okay. Don't disown the decision. It makes you look weak and disempowered. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, if it was me, I wouldn't have done this. I don't think we should be doing it. I would have made a completely different decision. And which, it's not my fault. I didn't do it. You can make a difference. So don't disown the decision. Please don't do bad news on the telephone. Okay. You all know the body language piece. Okay. Please don't do bad news by email. You can't fix a hassle by email. Okay. Fortunately, we have Zoom. Zoom's a wonderful invention. And it's not as good as being in the same room, but it's way better than bad news on the phone and bad news by email. Okay. Use Zoom or Teams. Other networking solutions are available. So how do you get prepared? After what we've said, this is going to be obvious to you. Have reasons to support your decision. Get there quickly. Tell them the news. Be clear and unambiguous. Yeah. Be businesslike and professional, and be honest. Don't make stuff up in the heat of the moment. Just this is where it is. Yeah. They'll put pressure on you. If this is it, restate your position. Okay. What about friends? So lots of us will work with people we regard as friends, and we find the prospect of difficult conversations with our friends challenging. So I've had to make people in a voluntary sector organisation that I'd worked with for years. We'd had dinner. Our other halves knew each other. Our children played together, and he was redundant. Okay, and here's what I learned. Treat them with the same respect. Do it the same as you would anybody else. Okay. The message is often harder, sometimes withheld, but they deserve the same respect. Treat them well. Okay. And do not presume on the friendship. Yeah. Just because you've been friends, if you're doing something that is career changing, life changing, maybe, then don't presume on the friendship. Your three classic responses, and none of these are acceptable. People clam up. They go, oh, if you say so, all right. And that's all you've got. Okay. That's unacceptable. People are argumentative. Yeah. Oh, I told you this was going to happen. I've been this way before. Yeah. There are ways of dealing with that. And people who get emotional. And, our greatest concern is that we don't know what to do when somebody gets upset or tearful. Okay. The temptations are pretend it's not happening. You just keep talking. It takes two to have an argument. Okay. So don't be a part of the argument. Don't rush things to ease your own discomfort. Don't make up promises, and don't ease your own discomfort. And please don't blame someone else. Yeah, I didn't want to do this, but here we are. And don't act defensively. So I have 1.5 minutes, according to my clock, to talk about strategy. So we're going to send you the slides. But strategy...
David, that's all right. You can just carry on going through them, then we'll just take a couple of Q&As at the end. That's fine.
Okay, thanks. I'll go back. Okay, so when you're thinking strategically, it's different from thinking managerially. So managerially tends to be short term, yeah, tends to be convergent thinking. Let me just move my picture. Okay, so it tends to be logical and convergent. So short-term thinking, good management, great management makes the pieces fit, and you home in, you kind of focus in. What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? Until you arrive at a solution. So it's very convergent and it's very pragmatic and it's deductive. If we do this, we will be sure of getting this. Okay. And it's about creating alignment, about everything joined up, everything fits like the jigsaw you can see in front of you on the screen. Yeah. Everything's perfectly aligned. Everything's got its place. Strategy requires a different mindset. Okay. It thinks long term. It deals with uncertainty. I don't like uncertainty, but I've learned. It's divergent. So it starts with, this is where we are. Where might we end up? Which is different from this is where we are. How do we close in and fix the problem? It's generally incomplete. Yeah. Long-term thinking doesn't have all the information it wants. And it's beyond linear. It's not A, B, C. It's not if I do this, if I do this, if I do this, this is what's going to happen. And this is key in strategic thinking. And it disrupts alignment. Okay, kind of, I had my ducks in a row. I thought everything was going to be fine. And long-term strategic thinking does quite the opposite. So it's about coping with uncertainty, complexity, inadequate information, while still seeking to make important decisions. Now, I have to work really hard at this because I'm a deductive, pragmatic, convergent individual. So I've learned to surround myself with people who are comfortable with uncertainty, who aren't thrown by complexity, and know that they're not going to have everything they need. But if you're not careful, that will paralyze you and cause you to be afraid of the future. So most people's version of the future looks like this. Here's where we are today. That's where we are in the future. There's a linear future, which is, this is where we are. This is how it's been. And it's going to be this way. It's going to stay this way. Yeah. Who's discovered that life isn't like that? Okay. Especially if you work in an area that is subject to sudden changes in strategy. No names. The usual time frame planning is 3 to 5 years. So apart from, you know, a good guess for 3 to 5 years, how are you going to deal with that? Well, this is your challenge. If you involve your team in strategic thinking, these are going to be all the possible futures. Yeah. And some will be faster moving, some will be slower moving. But I'm not suggesting this is appropriate, but every military power with those kind of resources have scenarios for what might happen if, and what the military's response will be. And one general famously said, we do all this strategic planning and it's fine until day one when you meet the enemy. Okay. So why do it? Well, because you're not starting from a standing point. All right. And who knows, there's always going to be the explosive thing. And I've touched on COVID. I've touched on Brexit. Both drove a bus. Okay. So integrating the future into your decision-making process by thinking big, the big picture, by thinking deep, not just shallow and long. How far ahead are we looking? So what's the shape of the future? What will be important? Those 4 questions will guide and shape your strategic thinking. But they're really obvious questions. Listen, this isn't some magic art. This isn't some kind of Harry Potter with a magic wand fix. Yeah, most of this is obvious if you take time to think about it and if you work to the models that we touched on and are available. And just closing with this, here's a great piece of research. Let me just move my picture again. There was a survey done by a large organisation that I worked for, commissioned to the leadership forum. And this is what people want in their leader: patience, confidence, persuasion, negotiation, technical skills or knowledge, decisiveness, positive attitude, enthusiasm, and commitment. And those are all quite low numbers, organizational skills. And then suddenly you leap. Yeah. You jump from 31% to 60%. People in their leader want somebody with some ethics and some integrity. And we don't have time to look at all the things that go to build integrity and trust, but there's some great work around that. And then finally, similar number, they want managers who are open and honest and have some connection and relationship. Approachable people, not soft people, not pushover people, not people you don't have to respect, but people who know how to connect and build relationships. Because this relational stuff matters, because there was a time in your career when your success depended entirely on what you did. Well, you've probably gone beyond that now. And now your success in your career, however you define that, the success in your career depends on other people's performance. Yeah. So knowing how to lead them, motivate them, connect with them matters enormously to your performance. So thank you for time, participation, and your thoughts. Dan, do you want to comment on this last slide? The QR code works, I think.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just if you can use the QR code, don't mind too much. I'll put a link in the chat as well. Just as I say, we
Great.
can do the tailoring and in-house stuff as well, so that would be much appreciated. But I'll just I just put my camera on. Thank you very much, David, and thank you very much for that. I can see loads of hand
Good.
applause emojis there.
Well, that makes my day.
And some very nice comments as well. I'm afraid I'll probably only be able to take one or two questions, I'm afraid. So the first one I will take is, and just also to just clarify, the slides will be sent out after this at some point this week. Excuse me, my voice is going. To the point, first question is to the point about leveraging the 18% of colleagues who are motivated. It's a good approach, but it does increase workload and expectations on those 18%, which can lead to disengagement, overwork, and burnout. How do you how can you find a balance?
Okay. I think that the key is, what are people already bringing to the party? And you'll know who those 80% are. Yeah. And you connect with them in terms of, this is the vision, this is where we're going. What role, what part do you want to play in that? Now, there may be, for really good reasons, they are the most passionate, enthusiastic people, but childcare prevents them working late, for example. And is working late even a good thing? So
Mm,
it's about, tracking people's performance, celebrating their successes, and yeah, not ignoring them. Yeah. If you're not connected with these people, you won't spot it coming. Yeah. Burnout always has some markers. So a conversation with these people periodically that goes, how's it going? How is it for you? Yeah. Have you got enough time, enough energy? Are you getting the support you need? Generally, these people want support, and you are the source of that support. So have the questions. And it's not rocket science. It's kind of, we just forget to do it. Yeah. Treat people like you would like to be treated. Yeah. And yeah,
mm.
don't kill your good people.
Great, thanks, David. The other question is there is often conflict in management hierarchy. How does a team balance the needs for operational day-to-day management with strategic planning management?
Okay. So you need someone whose lead responsibility is strategic thinking. Okay. And they pull on others. Okay. So they may pull on the managerial experience of other people who aren't strategic thinkers, but they've got information that will add value to your strategic plan. Yeah. Um, and I'm not a great one for, uncertainty. I like things lined up, my ducks in a row. Um, but I've learned to surround myself with people who find they just think that way. And I'm like, where did you get that idea from? Yeah. And my role as chief exec is to harness that and make it doable without killing somebody,
Yeah.
metaphorically.
One last question.
Yes.
Sorry for those who we can't answer the question now, but apologies for that. How do you improve morale and productivity in a team that has been impacted by a year of poor leadership and it has infected the entire workforce, resulting in poor motivation and productivity?
Have you got an easy question? I mean, that one. How do you? Okay, you if you've got a leader who has created that kind of environment, um, you need to have a conversation with them about the impact it's having on the rest of the team.
Mm,
And this is not a popular response. If they don't get it or refuse to get it, you will need to move them out. Yeah? Get them into a space where they're not being toxic to an entire team. Put in place someone who's not Mrs. Nice or Mr. Nice Guy, but put in place someone who knows how to connect and knows how to build relationship, who knows how to celebrate people, who knows how to fix people's problems. Yeah. And the behaviors that damage morale have an equal and opposite. And we don't have time to go into that now. But there are things you can do that will, but yeah, celebrate people's successes, watch their workload. Yeah.
Right, thank you.